Bell. I'm the Executive Director of the Building Association for South Central Indiana.
We're two of the co-hosts today. We are teamed up with the Ellisville Influence Chambers and BDOR today to host this event. We're really thrilled to see everyone here today. Really, the purpose of this event is to help share updates on the recent stormwater ordinance changes that took place. We'll be highlighting the differences between the county and the city of Bloomington and Ellisville in that process. The goal is to help you all understand sort of the broad brushstrokes of the event and where to go for project-specific questions. We know that we're not going to be able to answer every single question that may come up today. So if you have project-specific questions, we ask that you hold that to the very end at networking and follow up with the government representatives that are here today. We really do have a broad range of people in the audience today. I do want to recognize a number of our elected officials. We have Commissioner Gipkins from the county. I think I saw Representative Hall somewhere here. Good to see you. We do have the Ellisville Town Manager that is with us today.
Not elected.
Cheryl Munson, Congresswoman. Sorry, Councilwoman. Let's go promotion. And we do also have a representative from Congresswoman Cochran's office in the room as well. So thank you all for joining us. We're grateful that you're here. Did I miss anyone in the process? All right. But we also have, we have architects, engineers, contractors, those of you that are working with these regulations on a day-to-day basis. So this is obviously directly relevant. We also have people who may encounter individuals earlier in the process, and so we're glad that you're here too. Realtors, bankers, and others. We're glad that you're here because everybody in the room touches somebody or a client at some point that may need to know about these regulations. Today's agenda is on your table, so if you need that for reference. We'll first do an overview of the panel and some key materials. The panel discussion will run to about 2:15, and we'll be covering key topics about the ordinance. Everything from plan review permits and submissions to what's expected during construction, to standards for project completion, timelines for approval. Then we will have audience Q&A from 2:15 to about 3 p.m. So we ask that you hold your questions for that segment. And then we'll be doing breakout sessions and networking from 3 to 4 p.m. where you can follow up with individual government teams, etc. When we do introductions, also, if our government representatives, you might give a shout out to the teams that are with you here today so folks know where to find people. Also, thank you to Cass Bloomington, which is joining us today and is recording the event. So if you need to refer back to it later on for reference, please do so. I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, so we would like to recognize our co-host that put on this event, BASCI, Building Association of South Central Indiana, Bloomington Economic Development Corporation, Bloomington Board of Realtors, the Bloomington Chambers, and also the Ellisville Chambers. So we're going to have them come up, introduce themselves. We'll start with Chris. If you want to come up and introduce yourself first.
I like these podium, even if the microphone's not working. So, great to see a big crowd here today. Very important event. I am the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. We are a 109-year-old entity, remaining the leading business organization dedicated to fostering economic growth and community development. We represent 850 diverse entities, of which 80% are small businesses. Our network of businesses and professionals collaborates to enhance local commerce and serve the community more effectively than we could individually. We've come in here today because local government plays such a crucial role in water management, stormwater, runoff, flooding to ensure public health and safety. By implementing effective infrastructure and policies, they can prevent water contamination, reduce flood risks, mitigate stormwater runoff. These efforts are essential for protecting property, preserving natural resources, and maintaining residents' overall quality of life. As a parent of a Little Leaguer at Winslow Sports Park, we all confront Field 3's flooding every day, where it just sees rain and the game gets canceled. So this affects all of our lives. Now, to ensure compliance We need from our government clear and direct language and stormwater regulations, which are essential to developers and to effectively implement water management practices. The clarity helps prevent misunderstandings, reduce project delays, and promote the construction of sustainable and resilient infrastructure. The state ordinance is an opportunity to address one of the Chamber's public policy priorities, regulation. This could lend itself to modernize and streamline permitting, reporting, and application processes for development. Our members need to understand these changes and help them navigate the process. I think everybody involved, especially our co-sponsors here and everybody attending today. Thank you.
We'll have Joe come up next.
Hi everyone, I'm Jill Thurman with the Greater Ellisville Area Chamber of Commerce, and we are so excited to collaborate today with these esteemed organizations. Ellisville is experiencing remarkable growth and transformation. Our business community and our supportive town government help drive this progress, and this ensures a vibrant and a vibrant and prosperous future for all of us. We believe it's important to sponsor events like this to keep our members informed and to create an environment where businesses succeed. Thank you for attending today. We look forward to the discussion.
Good afternoon. I'm Kristen Whiteout. I am the Bloomington Board of Realtors Executive Director. Realtors are committed to the belief that everyone deserves a safe and healthy home. Homeownership is the number one way to build wealth and has a profound and lasting impact on the socioeconomic well-being of entire families for generations. So realtors strive to make the enduring benefit accessible to all. As realtors, we advocate for the protection and provision of housing for all of our community members. Climate issues significantly impact the most vulnerable more than any other population. So we are here today to give a voice to all our residents in our communities as we seek solutions to address stormwater's increased impact. And we look forward to the discussion today, and we thank you all for taking your time to contribute to the solution.
And Jen.
All right. I'll go in front of this podium. So I'm with the Bloomington Economic Development Corporation, and for those of you that aren't familiar with us, we're a nonprofit that serves all of Monroe County, and we're here to essentially help our community have a competitive edge in economic development. We work to attract and grow quality jobs for our community that also helps grow wages for the community as well. We're really, really delighted to partner with everyone on this event today. One of the goals that we have is to try to really bring people together so that we have good solutions for our community. So ways that we can facilitate really productive public-private partnership, make sure there's really good communication and information flowing back and forth so that we can work toward a stronger community together is one of our goals. So we're really delighted that you all could join us today, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, so we wanted to kind of let you know what led to these ordinance changes. The federal government required the state of Indiana to make updates to the stormwater regulations. With the state updating the regulations, it caused local governments to have to do the same. The state went from rule by ordinance to rule by permit change at the end of 2021 and had until July 1st of 2024 to implement. It's a big change for Indiana, which is catching up with other states. Anywhere there's an MS4, the state must delegate to the locals. Each jurisdiction is dictated by municipal, sorry. I might have had a shot before boundaries. So with that said, we want to introduce our panelists. I'll turn it over to Jen, but that's why we're here today.
All right. So please let us know while we're speaking here. I know they're still working on the microphones, but if folks in the back, if you can't hear us at any point, just wave your arms. We're going to go down the line, and I'm going to ask each of our guests And then maybe we'll do a quick introduction of who you are, and then we'll kick it back to Kelsey, and then move down the line, just with some, like, what are the most important things everyone should know about that? But we'll start with introductions.
Hi everyone, I'm Kelsey Cattonia. I'm the MS4 coordinator with Monroe County. I work for the Monroe County Highway Department and oversee the county's stormwater utility, the Monroe County Drainage Board, and our MS4 permit program.
I'm Liz Carter. I'm the MS4 program coordinator for the city of Bloomington. We're housed out of the City of Bloomington Utilities Department. Did you want me to introduce people we brought with us? So at the end, if there's any stormwater ordinance questions, I have a couple of staff members that came with me. Phil Keaton is here. He's the assistant director of engineering. Katie Swanson is one of our utilities engineers. And then Catherine Zager is our interim director.
My name is Michael Farmer. I'm a utilities director for the town of Ellisville. I've been in utilities all my life. And sometimes I'm the town manager of workforce. So I brought with me Joe Plummer, he's a new MS4 operator, and Denise Lyon, who's the planner for the town, and they really are the techies on all this. I came to talk about process more than technical questions. If you ask me a technical question, I'll pretend I do.
Hey Kelsey, do you have teachers too?
We do. Erica Tennis, our stormwater inspector. We have Lisa Rich, highway director. And then we have planning staff here in the
Fantastic. So Kelsey, let's, I didn't cut you off, or anybody else? Okay, cool. So let's start with you. If you could talk a little bit about what is this ordinance, why should we care about it, and where can everyone find the key information for that?
So, as Jason said, the ordinance is required under the Clean Water Act. EPA delegates authority to Indiana Department of Environmental Management, who then delegates authority to local government to have stormwater regulations and enforce. So the ordinance itself focuses on protection of water quality. We want to minimize the discharge of pollutants to our local waterways, our stuff. That's the goal here. So it can be related to discharges, construction permitting, and disturbing activity, etc.
And where can people find more information? What are the key things to know?
So for Monroe County, you should have a QR code or spread amongst the tables. That should take you to our permit website. And the main things you need to know is that we are developing fact sheets for different scenarios for permitting. So on the website, you will see a few major ones there. You're going to continue adding information on that website for folks who need to know if they need a permit or not, and what to do if you get a permit. We have links to our online permitting software on that website as well. Erica kind of, I think, is our point person for permits if you have permit-specific questions or any questions about that process.
Thank you. Fritz?
Kelsey covered quite a bit of what our ordinance is aiming to do as well. So our ordinance aims to eliminate water pollution. It also aims to control water quantity, to mitigate flooding in the city. Kelsey does as well, she knows. So if you'd like to know anything more about ours, we have a QR code on the table that you can recently made for us. That QR code will take you not only to our new ordinance that's on our website, but also our stormwater design manual that's currently in development. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Okay, in Ellisville, it's pretty simple. We have a banner up in our ready room that says, serve the community, protect the environment. I think that's what the stormwater is about. We're interested in leaving things better than we found them when we go on a construction project. I work in the field with my crews, and I always tell them, we always tell them to leave it better than we found it. I think stormwater ordinances go to that, and we believe in mitigating pollution more than anything. And pollution can be to the environment, it can be to the neighborhood, it can be to the highways. Stormwater is important, And it's stormwater mitigation is a finicky thing due to Hoosier weather.
Yeah. If people want to find more information,
They go to our website. I could dribble it off for you, but I can't.
all right, all right. So that's our introduction. I'm going to kick it over to Jason next for the next segment.
Okay, so we're going to start going over the topics. We're going to start with the plan review submissions and permits. So we'll just start with Kelsey. What triggers the need to apply for a permit?
Sure. If you are conducting any land disturbing activity in Monroe County outside of the city of Bloomington or town of Ellettsville, you go to Monroe County for your stormwater permit. The ordinance itself is very broad in its scope, so essentially any land disturbing activity would be subject to erosion and sediment control requirements. For land disturbing activity requiring a stormwater permit, that threshold is set at ½ an acre of land disturbing activity, or any project that meets the state requirement for construction stormwater general permit. That covers land disturbing activity 1 acre or more, or that's part of a larger common plan of development. If you are required to have permanent stormwater infrastructure on a property, even if you don't meet the disturbed acreage threshold, you would still come to us for a permit so we can oversee design of that infrastructure. And then if you are building a new single-family residential home, which if you're disturbing ½ an acre, most new homes will fall under that anyway. Or if you are just disturbing land within a drainage easement or a Karst Conservancy area.
Okay, Liz?
So if you are disturbing land within the municipal boundary of the city of Bloomington, but not on IU's property because they have their own MS4, if you disturb 2,500 square feet of land, you would need a stormwater management permit. There are some exceptions, but generally 2,500 square feet.
So in Ellettsville, a permit's needed, triggered by disturbing any land disturbance, particularly 1,000 square feet. I think if you're doing fill and it's 400 cubic yards, you need a permit. And then, of course, if you're doing, I believe it's more than 3,000 linear feet of utility work, and of course for roadways and single lots.
All right.
Okay. Next, what should applicants submit for site design? Let's start with Liz.
So for site design, if you are applying for a permit, the expectation is that a full set of civil plans are submitted to us and sealed by a licensed engineer. That would include an erosion control plan or a stormwater pollution prevention plan, or a SWIP. I don't want to have to say that again, so a SWIP. Any operation and maintenance documents, we need to see a draft of those. Drainage calcs supporting your methodology for detention and water quality, any draft easements, if there will be easements required, and an estimate for a bond that covers stormwater infrastructure and erosion control. Yeah, that's about it.
Mike?
Sure. Well, I believe we do, by the way, we do follow the Monroe County ordinance in Ellettsville for stormwater, for anything stormwater, actually. Their ordinance we follow, so we don't have truly our own ordinance. I've lost my train of thought, so what's the question?
It is, what should applicants submit for site design?
Yeah, so anyway, of course, you have to have stamped plans. We want them to be complete. We really encourage pre-construction meetings with that set of plans. We go through a tech review, which pretty much allows for us to let the builder or the developer know what's going to happen next when they start construction. There is a bond, and I think that covers it.
Okay, Kelsey?
Yeah, really similar to the others. For like larger projects, you need your civil plans, a drainage report, your SWIP, require an operation and maintenance manual for permanent stormwater infrastructure. That's for the large projects. For smaller projects that require a stormwater permit, we have a streamlined procedure. So your certified plot plan, for example, required through for your building permit, we can work with that and add any needed information into that for a streamlined process so that it's not as much of an extensive review. So it'll depend on the level of the complexity of the project.
Before we go forward, can everybody hear okay? I think they got the mic. Are we up and going?
Oh.
All right,
All
perfect.
right.
All right,
Thank
thank you. Okay, what are the development standards, including requirements for green infrastructure? Let's start with Michael.
Well, I'm not sure why that question, I'm not sure I can answer that.
Okay, let's start with Kelsey.
We'll come back to you.
Yeah.
All right, so basically any project creating 4,000 square feet or more, and there are exemptions of course, but in general, if you require that post-construction stormwater management, that's when we get into design standards for drainage, where you have detention, which is holding water back, water quality treatment, depending on the land use. We require at least 2 best management practices now for that, to meet that requirement. What else do I want to say? We have, the release rates of which we've been implementing for the past few years. That hasn't changed, but it's just official now in the ordinance. And of course, language that means that when you're grading the property, it has to discharge to a adequate, stable outlet or receiving channel. If you're building, say, an individual residential lot, to make sure that the grading is away from the home, no homes built in the floodplain, and comply with those floodplain regulations. So.
Okay, Liz?
Okay. So in general, our development standards are very similar to the county's. We have the same release rates now in our manual that Kelsey had, so we kind of copied her there. In general, though, anyone receiving a stormwater management permit needs to design for detention and for water quality treatment. We also require at least 2 BMPs. It's known as a treatment train. We have got some questions about that. We also require that 50% of water quality is achieved through green infrastructure. And there are some development standards for treating stormwater from parking lots, though that requirement has existed for years. It was just in planning's code, and we shifted it to the stormwater management ordinance.
So, well, now that I know what the question was, we do not require green mitigation for stormwater. Most of what we ask for is covered in the plans that we get from professional engineers, and I would just say common sense seems to prevail even in government documents. So, how you go about your business is pretty much spelled out in an ordinance, and probably from what you've talked to your engineer about. Just leave it at that.
Okay, we'll move on to requirement for bonds. Let's start with Liz this time.
So our requirement is that any project pulling a stormwater permit needs to bond for stormwater infrastructure and for erosion control. That we're calling that a performance bond. In the past, erosion control bonds have been required of any project pulling a grading permit. So the same projects would have to pull a bond as they did before the stormwater management ordinance went into place. However, there is a closeout process that should aid developers generally, where our performance bond gets switched over to a maintenance bond, which will be a much smaller amount. Once we've decided that the site is substantially complete, then the maintenance bond will be maintained for 3 years until all vegetation is signed off on and is looking viable. So kind of have 2 bonds in there.
I think everything but the performance bond closing, the performance bond, we do exactly as the city does, so.
Okay. Jen? Oh, did I cover you yet? I'm sorry.
No.
Kelsey?
It's okay, I don't need to talk about it. No, Monroe County, this is new for us. We didn't do a stormwater bond specifically before, but now, not a bond, it's an insurance. So we will require a letter of credit for new stormwater infrastructure. For the larger projects like PUDs, major subdivisions, we're gonna keep that with the planning department as public infrastructure. Anything else, you can go through the stormwater program for that assurance, but all projects will require a maintenance assurance for 5 years. And again, that's something new for the county. So, yeah.
to go through the stormwater program.
All right. So for the next segment, we're going to be talking about expectations during construction. Quick show of hands. Who in the room here is involved in the construction process in some way? This segment's for you. So we're going to start with Kelsey. Could you talk to us about what's expected during construction?
Yes. During construction, we expect you to...
She just saved your life.
We expect Jason to not fall off the stage. We expect compliance with your stormwater pollution prevention plan. We also know that the stormwater pollution prevention plan doesn't always go to plan. It needs to be changed sometimes due to site conditions and other things that come up. So we really expect good communication. If you can document and ask questions and let your inspector know difficulties you're having, that goes a very long way and helps us you just maintain compliance with that stormwater plan. So the erosion control requirements in our ordinance, we've been implementing the state changes already for the past 3 years. So you shouldn't see really many changes when it comes to active construction compliance. You've heard about covered dumpsters. We're getting into maybe skimmers, and that's a different one. But there are some things that we've already been implementing for about 3 years now. So the erosion control requirements don't differ greatly from the state for your stormwater pollution prevention plan.
Over to you, Liz.
Okay. The city very much is doing things the way Kelsey described. So we've been implementing the state erosion control requirements that they put in the CSGP in 2021. We've been inspecting against those when we go to sites for the past 3 years. When we wrote our ordinance, we mirrored those state rules so that they're easier to find. Someone can just look into our ordinance and find those. They don't have to go look for a state permit. So we just mirrored those, but we've been enforcing them the whole time. So yeah, really, erosion control rules haven't changed. Our expectation is that you follow your approved erosion control plan or your SWIP. If, just as Kelsey said, if there are any changes, that revisions are sent to our plan review team for review. And typically you'll see our inspector on your site about once a month.
Well, with what the two ladies said, I believe what I'd add to this is we expect that the people that are doing the construction to pay attention to the environment and their neighbors and nature, and we expect them to adapt to that. We expect to have communications with them. We like to be collaborative. I think it's a good word I've learned in the last few years. We like to be collaborative, and that goes through with communications, but more than anything, we expect them to try real hard to follow the expectations of the plans and the expectations of the town, and that if there's anything wrong, that they come to us. We work as a team when it comes to stormwater runoff problems. When it rains 2 or 3 inches in 15 minutes, a lot of things happen, and so we like to think that we can be forgiving, and we actually try to help the construction project in any way we can. And so just the expectation is to be very communicative and pay attention to what you're doing.
Along these lines then, let's talk a bit about enforcement and fines. What can people expect through the process? And we'll start with Liz.
Okay. So we aim to have all of the sites that are within our purview inspected once a month. If something comes up and we can't do that, we have a ranking system that prioritizes sites that are adjacent to environmentally sensitive areas, for example. So if we cannot hit every site in a month, we will hit the priority sites first. So once our inspector comes out and does an inspection, a report is generated and sent to all the staff we have listed as contacts for that site, the contractor, sometimes the owner. The report gets sent over. If there are major issues on the site, our inspector will be back about a week later to recheck it. If there are only a couple minor items, they'll be back the next month. So enforcement for the city of Bloomington, it is progressive. It starts with just a failed inspection. It goes to a notice of violation warning, and then the notices of violation will escalate at, if their site is not compliant.
Ellettsville.
Well, if enforcement and fines, I mean, truly, if we get to that point, somebody's done something or not done something they should have to get to that point. We try to shy away from it. Enforcement and fines are for the worst offenses. We are progressive about warnings and writing fines and even stop works. I think that's the biggest fine of all. It costs money. It ends up costing a chance for a successful job sometimes. It can be very expensive. And so we shy away from that every way we can. Once again, we go back to being out on the projects before it's getting ready to rain. I got kids that go, how do you know it's going to rain? I'm like, but so, I mean, we try to be out there to make sure that they are compliant, and if they haven't thought of something, we have, and that's where a team effort really comes into play. When it does rain hard, there's 3 or 4 of us out there inspecting during the event, and so if all else doesn't work, just to be a little crass, we are not against boot to butt if that's what it takes to get somebody to pay attention. So we will enforce, and we will fine you, and we will stop work if you cannot take care of business. But fortunately, most times we don't get to that point.
Awesome. Kelsey? Yeah, so Monroe County will see some changes with our new ordinance. So enforcement in general, our inspector goes to sites at least quarterly, but we are required by the state, as Liz said, to prioritize sites. So you may see the inspector out there more frequently depending on what phase of construction you're in, what watershed you're located in, or anything else that would bump up the sensitivity or priority of that site. So we also do a progressive enforcement program. In a regular inspection report, you may have some corrective actions. They may or may not have a deadline on it, depending on the inspector's discretion, how important it is. If there are repeated issues with corrective actions not being addressed, that's when we'll get into the things that we can do to take it to the next level of enforcement. We can issue stop work orders. We will be able to issue notices of violation. And now we can administratively issue fines, which our program was not doing previously with the stormwater regulations under the planning department. We would forward it to the planning department for enforcement, and it just took a while to make that enforcement process just work. So I'm hoping we can work more on the ground with the contractors and owners to address compliance concerns. If it does escalate, if there are any disagreements or issues or just problems that we're having troubles fixing, we will be able to deal with you within our program now, and hopefully it doesn't go beyond that. But yeah. So. Alrighty, thank you so much.
Okay, let's go over what's expected during a closeout. So what are some of the standards for project completion? Let's start with Liz.
Okay, so for project closeout, receiving sign-off from the MS4 program does not have any impact on occupancy either way. I think that's kind of a big difference between myself and these two. So MS4 sign-off is achieved when a site is stabilized and when all vegetation that's part of stormwater infrastructure is viable. So that will not be in the dead of winter. But since it doesn't impact occupancy, nobody's being held from moving in because of our stormwater requirements. So when someone's ready to close out their project with us, they would fill out an application for a certificate of completion. Our staff would come inspect the site, and when it is found to be finished, we would have the bondholder replace the performance bond with a maintenance bond. Also, as a part of the closeout process, the O&M manual will need to be recorded with either the deed or the plat, and any easements that were a part of that project would need to be recorded at that time. So those documents, we look at them as kind of first drafts during plan review, but they are recorded at the end of the project.
Okay.
That's it.
Kelsey?
Yeah. I'm mixing it up now. We have to keep this very interesting. I know this is really fun. So very similar to Liz, except that our program does coordinate closely with our county planning department for closeout. So when you file for your land use certificate, you should be at the point where all of your stormwater infrastructure is installed. There is a process for those stormwater treatment measures, such as a detention pond or a rain garden. Like Liz said, we don't expect you to plant those in the winter. In Monroe County, we require plugs to be planted in the bottom of those bioretention or rain garden areas. So the ideal time for that is spring or fall, usually more in the fall. So the planning department may decide to issue a conditional land use certificate so that most of the site is functioning except for that final landscaping within the pond bottom. Like Liz said, we also have that operations and maintenance manual for that infrastructure. That'll be recorded once we approve the as-built, so you'll have a surveyor come out and take all the measurements needed for the stormwater infrastructure. Once we approve those, then that can move forward. What else? The site should be stabilized at that point as well. So you can't finish your pond until the contributing area is stable, so you shouldn't have any bare ground at that point.
So when you're ready to close out, I believe the engineer, project engineer and the MS4 make an inspection. After that, planning does their inspection. And then I think we require a maintenance bond, and landscaping is included in our final. So we do work with people. There's a couple people in here who's going to look up. But we do try to work with them during inclement weather. And so other than that, it's, that's how you get out of it.
Okay. One of the things that has popped up is long-term maintenance. So let's go a little bit over that. We've got some realtors in the room. What do realtors need to know, especially related to HOAs and common areas? So tell us a little bit of how it's going to affect with long-term maintenance. And let's start with.
You can start with
Let's just
me.
start. Okay.
Okay, well,
I'm scared.
I really don't have a lot to say about it. I think it's new to us. I'd be afraid to go very far out on a limb. We have a lot of areas in the past that the town has taken over the maintenance of the areas based on, at some point in the future, nobody takes care of it. It's not unlike, I'm a utilities guy, it's not unlike taking care of fire hydrants and lift stations and things like that. For the good of the community, we always take those over because nobody else will take care of them. So I don't know what we're going to do in the future. We have a new UDO we're about to adapt, and I guess you'd have to call us back and find out what we're doing.
Well, the county will not take over maintenance responsibility for the post-construction or detention or any of those measures unless it's part of a county project. There are a couple of regional ponds that we help with in the county, but that's really it. Otherwise, we delegate that responsibility to the property owner, the business association, or homeowners association. So the changes that have been made, where we're finally looking at these now, is the state and their new permit that is also affecting construction permits. In their permit that regulates our MS4 program, they're requiring us to inspect those measures every 5 years. The previous regulations were very broad and didn't specifically say we had to do it, so nobody in the state of Indiana did it. It's not just us. So now we have the specific requirement to inspect these detention ponds every 5 years, if not sooner. Previously, we would go by complaints. If somebody downstream complained it wasn't functioning properly, or for whatever reason, we may have the ability to pursue it then. But this is going to be a much more rigorous program, and we hope it will help folks get ahead on just maintenance and save you money in the long run, so you're not having to rebuild a pond after neglecting it for 20 years. Instead, we can keep up on maintenance year to year. So yeah, that long-term maintenance piece is going to be tricky at first because we have a lot to catch up on. But we want to be a resource for everyone at first. If you have questions on a practice or you know people who own property with a practice there that they're responsible for, education is going to be our first mode. And then over the years, as we get adjusted to this, hopefully we can maintain everything in good condition, but we will have the ability to pursue the same enforcement just like on active construction sites if there is non-compliance, but or just a general threat to public safety. So.
Do you want to plug your HOA meeting?
I do, yes. So Monroe County, we are hosting an HOA meeting August 15th at the Ellettsville Library, 5:30 p.m. And it's going to be geared towards just members of an HOA board or people who live within a neighborhood that has an HOA. But everyone is invited if it's something that you're involved in. And it'll just be an hour or so. We'll talk about funding. We'll have someone there to speak on funding, and it'll just be us talking about easements and other the regulatory mechanisms we have to give folks a better understanding of what they're responsible for. We could talk all day about it, but it'll be about an hour. So.
Okay, like Monroe County government, the city of Bloomington does not take on private infrastructure that is post-construction stormwater infrastructure, except in very rare cases. Usually that it's a city project, we will take those on. So kind of as Kelsey said, a lot of our staff time is spent running down complaints for folks that have post-construction infrastructure, be it a pond, a rain garden, that isn't functioning properly. And I think her estimate of maybe it's 20 years old. We have some in the city that are 40 and 50 years old, and no one has maintained them. And now the state requires us to inspect them every 5 years, and beyond inspect them, they expect us to issue corrective action and get them into compliance. So we are looking for how we can best educate and help HOAs and other organizations within the city to be proactive, to know these inspections are coming, and to be in the best situation possible when those inspections do come. So I will probably also come to Kelsey's HOA workshop, and I'm jealous she had the idea before I did.
I'll have to give that to my staff. I really haven't done anything, so my staff is planning it for us.
I don't know. I heard it was going to be the event of the summer.
That's what I heard. So.
This is the event of the summer.
It's awesome. All right. So we're going to move on to our last kind of segment here. Everybody's favorite timelines for reviews and approval. I think that's a question that comes up a lot is, what can help people move through the process as quickly as possible and be successful in doing so. So I'd love for each of you to talk about the timeline process. Do we have any takers on that one?
I can go first.
You go for it. Go for it.
We really are only regulated on timeframes by the state when it comes to that initial review of your stormwater pollution prevention plan. We will comply with whatever timeline that is based on the size of your project. But otherwise, the review process, when you get into the drainage report, more complicated projects, we take the time we need to do a comprehensive review of that plan. I feel that if it's rushed, we don't want to miss anything, because sure enough, there's going to be something a couple years later where someone's house is getting flooded, and then we missed something. We really want to be thorough when it comes to public safety, for sure. The more complete a submission is, and the more responsive the designer is to our comments, it does make things go quickly. I do very much recommend calling our office before you even submit your permit, so that we can have a discussion on the individual site, any restrictions, requirements, any waivers or variations you may be requesting from our drainage design standards. But the sooner you can talk to us, and the more you talk to us, I think the quicker your process will go in general. So in the county, we also have a drainage board approval for your drainage plans. So that can take some time, because our drainage board only meets once per month. So depending on when you get me your plans, it could set us back a few weeks. So A plan can take, for a small site, without a drainage plan, we can turn it around really quickly. For the larger, more complex sites with drainage plans, it could take a few months for us to get through that process. So.
One clarification, because you mentioned the drainage board meetings. Are those dates posted so people could work backwards from those dates?
Absolutely. All the drainage board meetings for the year are posted on the county events calendar on the county website. We also have information on our stormwater webpage, or of course you can call us and decide which meeting you'd like to go to.
Great. Next to Liz for timelines for reviews and approval.
Pretty similar to what Kelsey said, although our drainage plans don't have to be approved by a board, but any variations or waivers from our design standards will have to go to the Utilities Service Board, which meets every 2 weeks, so it's a little sooner. Mostly our reviews are driven by completeness of what is submitted to us, as well as the responsiveness to our staff's comments. So as long as what is being submitted is complete and responses are also complete, things can go pretty quickly.
And
Okay.
Ellisville, Michael.
And I like what she said about having complete submissions and respond to the comments of the staff. Normally, people come in, want to know what's going to happen when they submit, and basically those meetings are important. So when they bring in their plans and submit, they go to a tech review that happens it used to be every third week, but now they've changed that on me. But it's every third week of the month, and after tech review, I believe after that, 1 week, and they can have their permit usually. So I didn't make the planner say that, she said it, so in 1 week, so.
Alrighty. Does anyone have anything to add before we move to Q&A with the audience? We'll do closing remarks at the end as well. But before we go to Q&A, I did want to, first of all, just say thank you, and please give them a round of applause. We know it's not easy working in public service, and so we just appreciate everything you and all of your teams do around for our community as well. We're going to move to Q&A, so this is turning it over to you all. For this segment, the questions that we're focusing on are really more broad brushstroke. If you have project-specific questions, we'd ask that you hold those for the breakout sessions and for connecting with the teams at the very end. So I think we will run mics through the audience here, so just raise your hand and we will come over to you. Okay, I'm going to start over here.
So I just want some clarification to make sure to understand this correctly, is with stormwater ponds and things of that nature, and the whole system basically. So we got a whole system, and I'm going to assume it's the underground system, everything. You're requiring a bond, you're 3 years of maintenance on that, and you're 5 years. Mm-hmm. Ellisville doesn't know what they're doing at this point, correct?
That'd be reasonable.
Right. Well, because so I'll get into more details with you guys personally later. I just want to make sure I understand that. So, and I also am hearing that in every future subdivision is going to have an HOA that has any stormwater in it, and you're going to require them to take care of all that. And what happened, I mean, I know that this ain't really your problem, okay? This is your boss's problem. But I'm just sitting here thinking you're putting this we're allowing this to go to the hands of a few individuals, and if they decide not to do something, water backs up, we got problems. But anyways, I'll deal with them on that. I just want to make sure that I understand you correctly, that is going to be a requirement for all these subdivisions in the future. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that requirement, it isn't new. We are managing the processes a bit tighter than we used to, I think. This might be a good way to put it.
So, but those costs will go to the HOA. You're going to inspect them
Yes.
once every 5 years.
Yes.
And if you say there's a problem, then that HOA has to organize whatever they got to do, try to get a hold of people to clean out pipes and do things and whatever.
So one of the things that we mentioned when we were talking about closeout and plan submission was that O&M manual. So the O&M manual should have in it directions on how to maintain all that infrastructure. And the reason we want it to be recorded is so that when the property transfers hands from the developer to the HOA, or if it's like a business park, however they want to organize their maintenance, they have clear instruction on how to proceed with maintaining this infrastructure, and it's recorded. So you can find it easily through the county courthouse. So we are trying to have at least the information available for them, which we haven't had in the past.
Would it kind of add something to you? Would it be possible that you had a list of qualified businesses, you know, with that help? So because they don't know anything. Okay, they're just people. They go to work and they come home, and this is just their home. And now they've got to deal with this thing that they know nothing about. Okay, that you guys deal with every day. Is it possible to maybe formulate a list of businesses that would be passed on to these HOAs that are qualified to help them maintain these systems?
Yeah, I mean, we've tried to compile lists in the past. It's difficult to maintain that list and to contact other companies to make sure, are you okay being on the list? Do you not want to be on the list? It's a lot to maintain. You can also contact companies from other counties. So we have, I think I have some keywords that I normally tell people to search for. Make sure they're at least, licensed and insured, and you're looking for an excavator, you're looking for a landscaper, or
I'm actually wondering if that's an opportunity for public-private partnership here between our organizations. We may be able to pull together some lists and make those available to people, and so perhaps we could partner there as well.
I'd say that that's a really good idea if there's the ability to the private sector to accommodate those needs. And I'm not big government at all, but when it comes to utility work, I will remind you what I said earlier. After 55 years in the business, I know, and 55 years in a business, I've yet to see where there was a good idea when it came to water and sewer, wastewater, if you will, infrastructure, where allowing HOAs to take care of their own, whether it be an apartment building or even a mall, definitely not schools and this, that, the other, that it's worked out that you left it to the individuals, the privates. They don't have the know-how, they usually don't end up with the money, and like somebody said, they come home and they just want to watch TV. And anyway, so I just never seen this work out yet. So when it comes to the infrastructure for stormwater, I'm a little new about that. The town that I work in now is pretty small, so we really haven't had to deal with it. But I would say there's some built-in ability for leaving it to the HOAs where it will fail, or it'll just not get taken care of. After 55 years, I promise that is the way it's been with water infrastructure and lift stations and such. And I know some other utilities, when we talk water and sewer, they think the opposite, that, well, you should take care of it. Why should the town take care of it? At the end of the day, you end up with your customers and your citizens, and they always come to the town anyway when they need help. You definitely don't want fire hydrants that don't work. And they only know that when you need it, and you definitely, they always call me when the lift stations quit working. And then, so now with the climate, the weather seems to have changed a little in Bloomington and Monroe County and Ellisville. We have 50 and 100-year storms about every 3 weeks. And so it goes with, the ponds and the retention ponds that will be a problem in the future, and then people will be, wet from the feet up coming to you saying, what can you do for me? Because we failed ourselves.
Kelsey, so the date of your event of the summer, again, for HOAs?
August 15th.
August 15th. So for all the organizations in the room, that could be a chance for us to pull together lists. Thank you for asking about that.
We-
for
I'm
that.
going.
Can I add one more thing?
Oh, yeah, please do.
We also frequently do individual site visits with HOAs or property owners, and we'll go out there individually and meet with those folks to talk about their specific issues. Yeah, so I think, Liz, you also mentioned you do like a post-construction meeting before.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, one of our
Yeah.
new items is that when we do closeout inspections, we plan to have post-construction meetings. So we have pre-construction meetings where everyone comes in and we talk about expectations during construction, but then the project has been 2-3 years long. So we are expecting folks to come in and talk about post-construction requirements. So we will talk about who's going to be maintaining this, and we would hope that that person, organization, firm would be there so that we could talk about, this is your pond, here's how it works, here's how you're going to maintain it, and we can get people set off in the right direction so they don't just get a paper manual that they're not quite sure what to do with.
2 questions. Who am I? Chris Smith, at least today. The county has a builder portal that works really well. Well, at least you know where things are, you know where things get stuck. The city doesn't seem to have anything like that. If we go to the city planning department, try to file something, it's a crapshoot of what's going to happen for the next 6 months. Is the city thinking about any type of portal to assist us in the process?
So I'm going to be a little over my skis because I don't work in city planning. They have been working on adopting a portal, but I don't know where they
Well, that
are.
would include, is utilities going to be part of that portal?
We are not yet. I think there have been talks about us joining it, but we are not yet.
So still no communication amongst the city. Okay, second question. And this is going to be specific. It's really for Bloomington and Monroe County. You talked about disturbance areas, but I'm going to be very specific. And this is not a specific project, it's a specific question. I buy an infill lot in Hyde Park or Tamaron or anywhere. I want to build a single family house. I heard 2,500 square feet of disturbance. I've heard 4,000 square feet of disturbance. I've heard half an acre. If I'm going to file for a building permit on an infill lot in the county, let's start with that, do I have to hire an engineer to do a stormwater plan for that lot?
Yeah, that's not a new regulation in the county. We require a certified plot plan for any new residents under the planning department's ordinance.
You say certified as an engineer or a landscape or land surveyor?
Yep, engineer or surveyor.
Engineer or surveyor. Okay. Same question for the city.
So when I mentioned the 2,500 square feet, one of the things I mentioned was there were a bunch of exemptions. They asked me not to get too in the weeds for our general discussion. One of those exemptions is a single family property. So you don't need to file anything for a stormwater review from me.
Okay.
So whatever the building department requires of you, whatever the city planning department requires of you, that's the requirement. There's no requirement for me. You're exempt from my regulation.
Does Bloomington require as-built now? Do you require as-built plans like the county does now? Certified plans? Post-construction?
For storm specifically, for all 3 utilities,
Let's just say all 3.
I think that would be a Phil and Caden question, our engineers. Yeah. He would prefer not to answer. Yes, generally, our expectation is that as-bills be submitted, yes.
And the as-bills, at least for us, is only for new stormwater infrastructure. So we're talking inlets and pipes, and most things are going to be under public improvements. We don't request as-bills for the entire final grade of a property unless that's a condition of approval on the subdivision as a whole.
Do you want me? I got.
Oh, you have, okay, I'll come back to you next.
Okay, so this is all really complicated and sounds very expensive. I'm not a builder. I'm not a planner. I'm not involved in any of that. But, I know that you guys all as employees are very short-staffed. You have very limited funds. But it seems like there's a lot of things that you may be able to actually work together on and make this a more easy process for everybody. Is there any chance that there could be some cooperation and work with the 3 different organizations. I mean, we're talking just Monroe County. We're not even talking like we're talking the entire state. We're talking one county that these professionals are trying to just build homes for our residents. Like, that's what they're trying to do. And they're trying to do it in a way that's safe and keeps safe drinking water for everybody. So if there was a way that we could get you guys on the same page and actually working together and sharing resources, I'm sure that we would all love that opportunity. I don't know what you need from us to make that happen. I don't know if you need us to start talking to our elected officials more to demand this, but we want to support you. We want to make it easier for you, and we want to make it easier for everybody in the room, because in the end, it supports our community better. I mean, the talk about HOAs and us as community members having to monitor our own stormwater is one of the most insane things I've ever heard. Because, I mean, to me, I lived in Marlin Hills, and I know what just getting somebody to monitor their own septic system, like, you can't get a person to monitor one septic system, let alone an entire stormwater for an entire neighborhood. So we know that that's not feasible. So let us know, what's your answers? How could we start working together to support you guys better?
You want me to answer it? Or do we need to answer?
I don't know. What's the answer to that?
I think.
I think you concluded what we should do, but I think collaboration is always in the works. Us people that work in the utilities industry and the planning and things like that, we talk amongst ourselves, and collaboration is not hard to think is not a good idea. But we were talking earlier before we started, and I'm a little of a novice with all this stormwater, when you look into it, it all comes from the same place. I mean, it's mandated from the EPA down to the states, and now they've put it on us, but we all are selling the same kind of car. I mean, we got a Ford and a Chevy, and I want to be Chevy. I'll be Dodge. But we have different cars, but they all do the same thing, and they came from the same place. And so I think it's the process sometimes that confuses everybody about how difficult it is. But I do agree that this process, along with anything involved with construction and development, it's important for the government. I'm the government right now. The government to be receptive to anything and all things that might help the process and make it more streamlined. I mean, it costs money in this county. I go to the BEDC meetings and all the other meetings. I hear it always comes up in a paper, and affordable housing is a big deal here. And alongside affordable housing is just successful business. Whether you're a single person trying to build houses or you're a developer or whatever. So all this matters. I get that. I think we all get that. And so streamlining and collaboration and this, that, and the other, if it can lend itself to affordable housing and making somebody successful, for me, I never make a decision based on, well, it's not my money. They just need to do this. So that's how I think, and I believe we all try to, pull to the middle. So that's my answer.
I think a good starting point for what we have been doing is we usually host an annual contractors workshop. We've partnered county, city, soil and water. We usually hold at Ivy Tech. And that is, I think, something that we've been able to successfully accomplish, is get all the contractors in a room. But it is something we need to improve. We need to get more contractors in the room, and we need to have that broader reach. So we have some ideas on what to do, but we definitely welcome input. So if we can start there and then say maybe branch out and do workshops for different audiences, I think that would be great, and we're open to suggestions.
All right, we have a question here in the back.
Can you clarify something a little bit? You guys say you sign off on these detention ponds after 3 years or after 5 years. And then 2 statements later, they're gonna have to be inspected every 5 years. So what's the difference between when you sign off on it to when you come back 5 years later and inspect it again?
So when we say we're signing off on it, that's us closing out your project, and specifically for the state, you've pulled a permit from the state. In all likelihood, if you disturb over an acre, you have. At that point, we can close out your project. You can release your bond. You're done with us monitoring you for construction or for that maintenance period. The 5-year inspection is considered a post-construction inspection, and the state just mandates that we check on it every 5 years to make sure it's functioning.
Okay, second of all, with all the new regulations that they've come across that you guys are now trying to enforce, do you have any idea the cost impact that it is doing to the normal house to be built in an HOA? We hear so much about, like what Mr. Farmer said up there, we hear so much about it's hard to build affordable housing in this county. Yet we just continue to add more and more and more on it, but we ask ourselves, why can't we do it? Does anybody know what that cost is that has been added to push that number even higher?
I do not know the exact cost for each property owner, or just in general what it costs to build a home. Some of the discussion the county had when we were passing the regulations requiring certified plot plans is that the goal is to save the property owner and their neighbors in the long run. So to be able to do your due diligence up front, make sure that you're within the proper setbacks outside of easements, going to design it so that it's going to be safe on a slope, or make sure that you're not going to be in a floodway. Those things can happen if you, say, don't involve a surveyor or a professional. When it comes to your primary residence, we need to ensure the safety of everyone. So those are things that came up when we were deciding to require those certified plot plans. We know it comes at a cost. We've been trying to streamline our permit process, and the online permitting has certainly helped. But again, we just hope it saves money in the long run, although it is a little bit more upfront. So.
Well, I will say this. Every time that you talk with the planning department, their answer is you need to change your site plan, which means you have to go back to the civil engineer, pay another $2,500 for him to make, a couple marks on it to hand it back to you, and then you move forward, and then the next one, it's another 25, whatever it is. So it's not really saving them money, just so you guys know.
Okay.
It's really costing and shoving the cost of, everything across the board. It's just shoving it straight through the roof.
Okay.
Just to piggyback on what he said, it was just an additional question. I mean, that's planning, and you guys are utilities, and I understand there's a difference there, but I think so many people in the room here do see how terribly difficult it is to navigate the planning process in City of Bloomington and the county. Compare that to Ellettsville. It's a dream in Ellettsville. You know what you got to do, and when you leave there, you know what you've got to get back with, and it's predictable. But with the city and the county, it is not predictable. I think the fear here is, do you have enough manpower, enough money for the manpower to handle all of this? Because a lot of that fear comes from the city and the county planning departments not having enough staff to keep up with the number of projects that hit their desks. So they may come back to you and tell you, we need X, you bring them X, and a month later you contact them again and say, well, we haven't heard anything. And they say, oh, well, now we need Y, and now we need Z. And here you are 12, 13 months later, a lot of money into it, where you could have done all this up front. And, and I know the planners aren't happy about it either, but they don't have enough manpower to keep up. So the question is, are you going to be able to keep up? And is that going to be the same experience down the road with the stormwater? And if it is, do you have any ideas how to deal with that?
Yes. That's an excellent question. Thank you. So one of the things that we did for the City of Bloomington for our stormwater ordinance is we did take a couple things off of planning's plate. So we're hoping that helps them a little bit. The other thing that we do is our review team for City of Bloomington utilities, the folks that are reviewing everything from utility easements to your water, your sanitary, your storm, our utility review team meets fairly regularly to discuss how we can improve our processes, because we've identified that we don't want to be an unpredictable black hole where someone sends their plans and they don't hear from us, and then they hear something they weren't expecting. So that is something we're continuing to work on as an organization, because we recognize it. And we also, we do meet with planning every 2 weeks to just talk about projects that we're reviewing, projects that we're inspecting, things that we're working on, as well as the engineering department. So we are constantly trying to evolve and become better. So please don't think that we aren't, but it does take some time. I think, at least at utilities, we're on a really good trajectory for our review times coming down, and for our comments being more succinct. And I appreciate Phil's staff for leading that.
In the county, we are planning on hiring another full-time position to help with the permitting. Again, we are taking these regulations from the planning department, although we've been kind of implementing it as like it is right now, past few years at least, where we collaborate with planning very closely. But we will be hiring a new position pending all approvals. You just started that process for hopefully in 2025, so that we can provide quicker review times, better responsiveness, and just have one more person on the ground to help us. So I appreciate that comment.
I did want to add too that, at least from utilities, we're developing different administrative and guidance documents so that people can have the best possible understanding of what our expectation is before they submit something and get comments back where they weren't expecting to get those. So we are trying to develop as much guidance as we possibly can, but those same staff that are trying to get their reviews done as quickly as they can are also the staff trying to provide that guidance. So we're trying to get through it as quickly as we can while still providing helpful documents.
When it comes to Lake Monroe watershed, is that you guys, or will it be planning?
The Lake Monroe watershed is located mostly in Monroe County. City of Bloomington does not drain to Lake Monroe.
But will it
So.
be a planning issue, or will it be the stormwater utilities?
Both.
Oh.
Yeah, we both have jurisdiction, yeah. So just depends on your activity, if it's subject to a planning process and a stormwater permit. Yeah.
All right, thank you. We have a question over here.
Hello, I'm Eric Deckard with Deckard Land Surveying. This question is mostly for Kelsey. With respect to easements, does this new change give you the ability to require drainage easements across individual property lots themselves?
So we would require an easement if it's proposed for development, yes.
Okay. Now, let me kind of throw an example out there. Say that it was an individual lot owner, they was looking at building a house, and there's a drainage way through there, but it's not platted.
Okay.
Can we require an easement across that lot owner?
We wouldn't normally require that, no.
Okay. What would trigger an HOA? Would a minor subdivision trigger an HOA?
It's a good question for the planning department. Typically, it's only for major subdivisions, right? Major subdivisions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Tamby. This is a really broad question. I don't know if you can answer it, but would the state stormwater requirements be met if we had regional detention instead of all these individual projects having detention? Like, is there a different way to skin the cat?
There are multiple ways to do it. Regional detention is very difficult in Monroe County. We have a few, and it's difficult. One thing is just topography. We have a lot of slope land, and so even on one development site, you could have your land draining to multiple areas, requiring multiple detention ponds. So normally, if you're going to do regional detention, it's very likely you're going to get into larger streams, where then you have to have state permitting, floodway permitting, et cetera. Thinking of one I have on the west side that is difficult. And I'm not sure the state would even approve that at this point, to dam up a stream that large. It's, it's something that we tend to not recommend, and it's really just for maintaining the existing regional ponds we have, but definitely requires a robust association to make sure that it is properly maintained because they are higher risk facilities typically. So, it's not a
From
great
the city perspective, we would love to see proposals for regional detention. We are even more restricted by land area than Kelsey's jurisdiction of the county, of course, because we have a lot more of urban setting. But we have provisions in our ordinance for regional detention if somebody would like to propose it, how we would like them to, get plans to us early on. But we would love to see regional detention. And CBU, I know generally we'd also love to build some.
All right.
No thoughts?
Well, yeah, if we could do regional detention and build another Lake Monroe right beside Ellisville, that'd be excellent. The costs associated with it it would just kill all the planning in the county. I think the cost, it's virtually impossible anyway because of topography, but the cost is only second to the topography to be a detriment.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about an HOA responsible for a high hazard dam, you just get into a whole nother level of responsibility, so, sorry.
Sorry, Kerry Dishman, Dishman Construction Development. Long-term, as a developer, if, say my statute runs out on my 5 years on the maintenance on a retention pond, I turn that over to HOA. You guys come back in 5 years and inspect that. If you find it's at your discretion. So if you come in and say this needs $10,000 of maintenance and upgrades above and beyond what we agreed as a builder and developer and the county, city, Ellisville, whoever, to put in, this retention pond was working, but say it needs some maintenance, or do you have the discretion to force them to do upgrades on this at their cost? Not beyond maintenance, I mean upgrades.
Upgrades, so
Yes.
changing its original design?
Yes.
I don't believe so. I think the only time we would be looking at upgrades is if say you had a pond that was serving a subdivision, you'd only planned for it to serve this portion, and you develop, to the west. The new subdivision is developed, and they say we want to use the existing pond. We want to upgrade it so
Right.
it can serve both.
If
That'd
it
be fine.
hasn't-
But no, we wouldn't
If it
come
hasn't
back.
failed,
Right.
if it hasn't failed, somebody develops down the road and says, hey, we're getting too much water. We ran into an issue where we ended up doing 2 retention ponds instead of 1 to accommodate some things. But outside of being out of my pocket or anything else, long-term, if I'm turning over this property, or if, say I retain it, I'm just curious how governed we are as far as if you're gonna come back and say, this is gonna be another $10,000 5-10 years down the road.
The expectation is just maintenance and that you keep the original functionality of the pond, so
Okay.
that it's detaining the same amount of water as it was designed to do, that it's treating for water quality at the same rate that it was designed to do. We're not gonna come back and say, now you need to detain twice as much water.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Thank
That's
you.
a good general answer, yeah. I mean, we would refer to the original engineered plans for the pond, but I do see your concern is if those plans don't work, or, obviously 10 years down the line, our 100-year rain event is gonna be increasing.
Right.
I would take it just case by case, depending on the severity, the risk to public safety. Yeah, case by case, unfortunately, is not a great answer, but.
Good afternoon. Question for Liz. You were mentioning earlier that there may be exemption or exceptions for smaller residential projects. How about commercial? Do you see a smaller commercial project, and what would be an example of that?
So the exemption so the threshold for a stormwater management permit is 2,500 square acres of disturbance. We have some discretion when a project isn't really changing anything in terms of impervious surface to exempt it out. And there's also exemptions for things, and I've already had some questions about this since the ordinance came into effect, about if you're just like milling and repaving your parking lot, for example. If you're doing that, you do not need a permit. You're just milling and repaving your parking lot. But generally, if you are creating 2,500 square feet of land disturbance, as we define land disturbance, which is, again, has some exemptions to it, which I'm sorry is complicated, you will need to pull a permit.
All right, we've got one over here.
Tim Hansen, just to clarify, I think the first commenter and then over from Chamber, there was a question on stormwater going to private maintenance. I think the clarification is that detention areas and things that are on private property go to private maintenance. Things that are in the public right of way, you do a subdivision. The storm sewer and facilities for storm sewer would be public after inspected and accepted by the city or the town.
That's correct.
Yes.
Thank you for
So
that
the detention
clarification.
area and the water quality stuff would end up being the homeowner's responsibility, not the city's. Although I like where Mike was going on that. I mean, well, kind of like water distribution and sewer service, as we engineer different things that require more and more and more maintenance, it becomes so specialized in maintaining down the road that I'm sure before there was lift stations, you know, we just had to set up different treatment areas. Then there was lift stations, and the city decided nobody's ever going to take care of these. We're going to do two things. Either the only lift station is going to be one that the city maintains after accepting it, or we're going to the individual E1 pumps and we're going to get rid of all other types of lift stations. So are we getting to a point where the storm sewer infrastructure and maintenance is getting that complicated that it needs that kind of thought process? That was just
might
more.
be. No, that's a thing that I just want you to know, that's a thing that our staff is thinking about, and I know Kelsey is too. That's why she's having the HOA meeting next month, because we get a lot of complaints. I mean, I know generally we're talking about new construction, but we're getting complaints from people who have a neighborhood that was built in the 60s and their infrastructure is not working. And we have to say, unfortunately, when this was platted in 1964, the developer decided an HOA would take care of your pond. So your HOA needs to take care of your pond, and people obviously really don't like that answer, and we don't blame them. So right now we're at the point where we're going out, we're meeting with them, we're giving them advice, and then they go get an engineer to draw up how to, you know, fix their pond, and they come back to us and they say it's going to be $20,000, and we say, yeah. So we are looking for better ways to address this, because it is a problem that we see throughout our community, and our engineering staff, as well as myself, spend a lot of time responding to citizen complaints about it. So as far as I know, nobody's cracked the code on this yet, but I was hoping Kelsey would by the time her meeting rolls around. But we are open to any. I mean, we've tossed out a couple ideas over time, but we haven't come up with a way to solve HOAs maintaining stormwater infrastructure yet. But I guess I hope we're right around the corner. Yeah.
Well, and kind of my point is at some point in time they're so complicated, would the city start taking them? It would be just like the sanitary sewer water distribution system. It's put in by city specs, it's inspected, it's accepted, and then taken over.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we're resistant to that, but I mean, stormwater, at least like as a utility for the city, is something that wasn't really even thought a whole lot about until the late 90s. So we're kind of like, stormwater is the little brother of the other two utilities. I think everyone knows that. So we are still like progressing a lot with it, and we also truly don't have the staff or the money to take on every piece of storm infrastructure in the city at this point.
So, to be the bad guy, so, you know, I mean, with that, HOAs are great when they start because everything's new and you throw a little money in there and buy a picnic table because you didn't need it for anything else, and everybody likes that. But eventually the HOA turns into an HO, and then it's just a H. So, I mean, it dissolves after 20 years. People don't know each other anymore. They're all watching the internet, and it just goes away. So, for me, you know, just sitting here thinking, because I like to think in the future, during this conversation, I'm thinking that maybe, because I do believe the government, it's one of the things that they do well is take care of the infrastructure. Maybe what HOAs are going to expect is at the time when they come into being, that maybe the government should extract, this is what you're going to pay us every year, and it just be part of the deal right up front, and that money goes into a fund that allows for the government to have the expertise, the manpower, and the workforce and the equipment to maintain those. And I mean, that may solve the problem, but it wouldn't be for nothing. I mean, it can't be for
Oh, no,
nothing.
I'm
Sooner
not-
or later, everybody pays. So,
No, our water system and sewer system don't run for free.
That's right.
You know, it's
That's
part
right.
of taxes. So I wasn't getting there, and I didn't want to get into the weeds on that. Another question at the table was, you're in the interstitial period between getting your approval and you went from performance to maintenance bond, and you want to sell the property. How do you transfer that responsibility?
That's a great question. My expectation would just be that the maintenance bond can be posted by the new owner. So the old maintenance bond can be released as soon as the new one takes its place for the same time period. That would be acceptable to me. I will double check with our finance assistant director to make sure that'd be fine with him. He's really excited about managing bonds.
Question, this is coming down from the feds to the state to here in Monroe County, and other states have implemented this, other communities have implemented this. What are the best practice? What have we learned along the way that situates us a little bit better than other communities?
Oh, well, what have we learned? So we do attend a few times a year regular meetings with other stormwater programs. And what we are managing locally, everyone else in the state has similar problems, but we also have a venue to discuss what works. So we've gotten good ideas from other stormwater programs around the state. But for the most part, it's usually dependent on funding and, you know, the structure of your staffing and everything. And someone just happens to be in a good position in another county, that's great for them. It's often hard to take some of those successes and implement it locally. That's really general, sorry. But most times what we're seeing is that we are struggling with the same things. You know, for example, if an HOA just doesn't exist, nobody in the state can help us. I have no clue what to do in that situation, honestly. But yeah. So we do have a way to communicate with others and see how they work and have these discussions with other communities. So we do take what we've learned and try and implement it locally.
And I'll say, when we were developing an ordinance and kind of all the administrative processes that go with it, I certainly looked at West Lafayette fairly often. Unfortunately, some of the other cities that are similarly sized to us, example is South Bend, they're on a river, so their stormwater management is completely different from ours, and their concerns are completely different from ours. Really, you know, West Lafayette kind of is too, but I took some ideas from their ordinance, and their ordinance was only like 3 or 4 years older than ours. So, it's, you know, I think it's, like Kelsey said, something everybody is working towards to try to figure out.
We used, the state has a model stormwater ordinance created by Christopher Burke Engineering, and so that's who we contracted with for our county ordinance. Granted, I changed a lot in it to work for our community, but that's the beauty of it, is we are able to change our regulations so that it fits what we need. So, you know, South Bend isn't gonna need a whole chapter on karst features, so we were able to add that in. But in general, if you were to look at our ordinance, you would find a lot of similarities to other communities who use that model ordinance. It's very widely adopted across the state.
And because of that, honestly, when Kelsey and I got together, we were both, I don't know, probably 5 months, 6 months away from taking our respective ordinances for adoption. We hadn't adopted them, hadn't been like creating them together, but when we met and talked about it, it seemed that we arrived at a lot of the same conclusions independently. So I think that even this ordinance adoption we've had recently has brought the county, the city, and Ellettsville too, right? A lot more in line with having some similar regulations than we were even a year ago. So I think we're making positive progress.
Randy Cassidy, a couple of questions in regards to the maintenance of our existing homeowners association. A, do you guys know, city, county, Ellettsville, how many homeowners associations exist at the present moment in our county to even get hold of to say, hey, you may have a problem? And how can that be addressed? So the current owners that don't know they have an HOA, they're just an H, as Mike put it.
Right.
So that they know that they're going to either need some assistance from the community government, or they're going to have to start figuring it out themselves. Do we have any idea, or how do we find that out as the 4 MS4 coordinators in our county?
We do not have a comprehensive list of every single HOA in Monroe County. We have a list that we're compiling based on information we have, and we're starting to reach out to other organizations to help us fill in some gaps.
We're in a similar situation. You know, we have a list, and same thing with just post-construction facilities within the city of Bloomington, period. We have a list. It's not completely comprehensive because, you know, we're looking back into files from the 50s. So some of it is we're going to work through our list. I'm sure we're going to discover organizations and facilities we didn't know about, but yeah, we're working on it.
Well, as you go out and inspect these ponds, either complaint-driven or as you see them and find out, what kind of timeframes are you going to give the individuals to identify the problems and identify what the costs are so that they're not caught off guard? Because as we've all discussed, the affordable housing issue, this also goes to the existing homeowners that are there and what the costs will then cost to increase that because of the operational cost, not just the first cost that we have based upon what our infrastructure is.
We, at least the city, we have not set like hard and fast deadlines for when folks need to have, you know, have a plan to mitigate something that's found to be non-compliant. That's something that our leadership is still talking about because that timeline might be years. You know, this isn't something we're coming out and saying, we need a plan 2 weeks from today for your pond that's been not maintained in 50 years. That's not reasonable. So we're still talking about that because our requirement to start inspecting them hit 2 weeks ago. So we're still kind of getting the program put together, and we, of course, you know, welcome input from folks such as yourself.
Yeah, well, and that's what I'm trying to get at is if we're looking at these long-term plans or say it's too expensive at this particular point, we got to look at those timeframes so people are prepared from the dollar standpoint because it really comes down to the functionality of not having a catastrophe and being able to afford the dollars in the long run as we're doing. And the last question is, does the 4 MS4 coordinators in Monroe County, because every one of the municipalities is within Monroe County, do you have an ongoing continual meeting of the 4 of you in order to identify, because as an engineer told me a long time ago, stormwater doesn't know political boundaries. It only knows topography. So I'm just curious for coordination on that. Thank you.
Do you want to talk about sweep meetings?
Yeah, the MS4 coordinators, so Michael,
Well,
we don't meet,
Yeah.
but we do have staff who meet regularly, I think every other month now, or every month. We have a group, it's all our educators, our stormwater environmental education team. So they meet very regularly to coordinate on outreach and other program happenings.
And that extends beyond our county lines as well. I think Lawrence County is involved with that sometimes, and it's other departments within the city as well. So we have a group that comes together to talk about just stormwater issues, stormwater education, stuff like that. And it's our staff, you know, our MS4 staffs are, there's various county staff, city park staff is there. So we do, that is a dialogue that we have.
I don't have an answer to the meeting of the MS4s, whether they do or not, but I'll find out.
This is it.
And then, too, we have a statewide board of MS4s that does meet on a monthly basis that I am on. And we talk about a lot of stuff like this too. And we have an annual meeting where every MS4 in the state comes together. And we talk about the kind of the issues of the day, if you will. And ordinance development and implementation was definitely something we talked about this past May.
All right. One quick note, because it is warm in here, they are working on the air conditioning, so I wanted to let you guys know about that. Also, because this is a hot topic, obviously. I know, that was like a dad joke.
Somebody take the mic away from me.
Come get it. Any questions on the front of the room here?
Okay, I've got a couple that came in, so if you have a question, please raise your hand so we can make our way over to you. Is Title 13 retroactive to existing developments? If no, what would cause a project to fall under the new Title 13?
Okay, that's specific to me because ours is called Title 13. No, it is not retroactive to existing developments. And what would cause Title 13 to apply would be that if somebody submits drainage plans, even preliminary ones, to CBU for our review after July 1st, which is when it became effective, then Title 13 would apply.
Okay. Can you guys explain why you chose 2,500, 4,000, and can you just explain where you guys came up with the numbers?
I'll go first. So the 4,000 square feet of impervious, that was already in Chapter 761, which is our Monroe County Stormwater Management Ordinance. So we did not change that number. The half acre, that is something that we deliberated over the course of many years. The state permit threshold is at 1 acre, but we receive a fair number of projects that come in at 0.9999 acres. But basically, we saw that there are projects that can have substantial impact to sensitive areas, and the half acre we found as a good threshold for Monroe County based on the type of disturbances we see, our topography, et cetera. I will note that the Christopher Burke model ordinance across the state has a threshold of 10,000 square feet. So when I came in January 2021 and saw this model ordinance, and I said, that's not going to work for Monroe County, we went ahead and changed it up to half an acre. But there are many counties in the state that use 10,000 square feet as a threshold for acquiring a stormwater permit.
So our threshold is 2,500. I mean, first of all, kind of like Kelsey said, the municipal boundaries of the city includes a lot of urban development and redevelopment, whereas she has a lot more rural development happening. So our threshold is smaller than hers. Also, we were looking at taking bonding and responsibility for erosion control from a split, which before our stormwater ordinance, if you had an erosion control question or complaint, you would call the city and you could be sent to one of 3 departments. You could go to planning, you could go to engineering, or you could go to us, to CBU. And we thought it was incredibly unclear to have various departments managing, hey, there's dirt in the road. So what we did is said, okay, if we're gonna manage erosion control for all development, what does that threshold need to be so that planning doesn't have to manage it anymore? So planning was managing erosion control for development from 2,500 square feet up to an acre, and then my team was taking everything over an acre. So what we kind of agreed to planning with is, hey, we'll take all erosion control, so it'll start at the 2,500 square foot, which is where you guys had always had your starting line, and we'll just take all of it so that it's not confusing for folks going forward. So kind of those 2 reasons.
And I have no idea why we have 1,000 square feet. For me, it's land disturbance, and you could be under that and still find an MS4 operator coming to see you under certain circumstances. So I'm not sure the size of the land disturbance being relevant for me. I mean, I don't know where it came from. It's before my time.
So let's talk a little bit about that. What is land disturbance? If I grab a hold of my tiller and I do a 50 by 50 foot area to make my garden, that's 2,500 square feet. Do I need to come see you?
If you're tilling up your garden on your single-family residential property, you absolutely do not need to come see me, and that's why we have that exemption. Because if someone is just like planting some trees on their property, we don't want to see them for that.
And for me, I mean, you could disturb 1,000 square feet and you may not see us either. It's relevant to how it affects the surroundings. So, pardon? Oh, if you need a grading permit, I'm not sure I have a good answer for that.
Now, I will say, if you have tilled up your garden and then you drove your truck all over it and you've tracked dirt 5 blocks down the street and your neighbor calls us to complain, you will hear from us. Because the erosion control rules apply to everybody, and that's where I'm saying, like, we went from having 3 different groups doing erosion control, inspection, enforcement, complaint response to it being one group. So as long as you don't track dirt out into the road and your neighbor calls us, you will not have any involvement with us whatsoever. Just keep your dirt on your property.
And the illicit discharge ordinances that we all have applies to everyone. You can't dump paint into a storm sewer, even if it's not associated with land disturbing activity. That's still a violation of another part of the stormwater ordinance. To me, land disturbing activity is anytime you're changing the ground surface elevation. As soon as your blade hits the ground and starts to go into the soil, that is your beginning of your land disturbing activity. And there, again, many ways to talk about it and define it. In the county, we have exemptions for agriculture, of course. Those are standard exemptions, part of the federal stormwater regulations. The main difference that we have in Monroe County is the logging permit, where it was formerly housed under the planning department's regulations. That's changed, and we've taken that on with our new stormwater management ordinance. Essentially, we took an exact copy of their logging permit in the OpenGov portal, and we just created it again. It's literally the exact same thing, just housed under a different ordinance. But if you are clearing trees with the intent to develop, we may ask you to apply for a regular stormwater permit based on what we're seeing. Again, it just falls under those erosion control regulations, but we're trying to get ahead and help with the planning so that it doesn't cost more in the long run. So.
Perfect. There was also, I didn't quite catch, did you say OM manual? Is that what you call it?
Sorry, Operation and Maintenance Manual, or an O&M manual.
O&M, okay. So that's like the design manual or whatever that I've heard thrown around a little bit? Is that
Not
same?
the same thing.
Okay, what is
So,
that? Can you explain?
Yeah, we're working on a stormwater design manual to replace our stormwater design manual that was originally written in 2008, and it's kind of like a companion document to our ordinance with a lot more specifics about design, like what slope can your detention basin be and things like that. So that's a manual that the City of Bloomington is currently working on, and if you want to learn more about it, there's a QR code on your table.
But the operation and maintenance manual is specific to a stormwater infrastructure, and it's going to tell you why it's there, what it is, how to maintain it, a list of things to look at when you're performing an inspection, inspection frequency, and it'll have a page from the plan set showing its original design, elevations, etc. So.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody? Jen?
So thank you so much. First of all, please give this group a round of applause, because that's a long time to be on stage. Yeah, that's a really long time to answer questions, so we do appreciate that very much. Before we open up to networking, we do want to give you guys a chance for some final comments, and then after that, we'll kind of indicate where each government representatives can be found around the room for additional conversation. Who would like to start with some final comments?
I love comments.
I love comments. I really don't. I think we covered everything today. I'll go back to my original. I know somebody that always talks about collaboration and how important it is. And I think you can mitigate a lot of your problems, a lot of your worries, some of your costs by collaborating and communicating what you're going to do, follow the rules, and the rules were made because somebody was a bad actor, but the rules are there for a good reason. Follow the rules, and I just, in Ellettsville, I'd say in the county, communications will save you a lot of time and money.
Great.
Yeah, definitely echoing that. Please contact us. If it doesn't seem clear, you have questions or concerns, please contact our office. We can meet with you individually. We can talk over the phone. We can meet on your site, on your property, and we are here to be a resource for you performing this service. Communication absolutely goes a long way, and we're just looking forward to helping everyone and just really thanking you for your patience as we navigate new systems and trying to get the word out. So yeah, thank you.
I guess kind of echoing what they both said, we also appreciate communication. If you are anticipating a development and you're not sure how what rules it's going to fall under or what you're going to need to submit to us, we, City of Bloomington Utilities, we're happy to meet with you. We had a couple folks last week that we were able to pull together kind of a let's chat about your plans meeting in less than 24 hours. So that's not always the expectation, but we're happy to have you come to our conference rooms, talk through your projects with us. We would much rather that than everyone's frustrated months down the line. So we are happy to have as much communication as possible. And as Kelsey said, we appreciate everyone's patience while we try to update all these things and produce as much material as we can that is helpful.
All right, thank you so much. So as we wrap up here, so for some conversation, because I see Ellettsville, if you want to wave. So for this next segment, for anybody who would like to hang around, we'll have representatives from government in different parts of the room, and so you can find folks there if you have additional questions. So we'll put Ellettsville where they were just waving, and then maybe we can do City of Bloomington in the middle here, and then Monroe County, if people are willing to meet on that side of the room, that's where we can do that. So thank you for all of our government representatives. Jason, did you have any final thoughts?
Should give you the short walk. You don't want to go there?
No, just thank you everybody for coming. Thanks for everybody that put the hard work together. And we really do appreciate you all coming out and being part of this community and working hard to make it better.
We look forward to doing more of this. Thank you all.
So maybe my MS4 guy.
What? Yeah, you said he was really nice.